Wake up! Cash is making money again. You can take that to the bank.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
How cheesy was that?
So I never know what you're going to do these intros, and I don't know this song, but you know the song, I was like, wake me up before you go. That's what I thought.
It's Wham.
That's where I thought you were going.
It's George Michael.
I thought that's where you were going.
So, no.
But that's not where you went.
Oh, I guess looking at the title, I could have gone. I
that's
totally
what I
could have
kinda
whammed this thing up a little bit. But it's, no, that's not what we're doing. Here's the thing. Bo, I worry about people of your generation.
Well,
This is almost a public service announcement.
yeah, see, and look, so I guess technically, I fall into that millennial camp. So is this about to be another one of those like millennial
No, I'm not
bashing
picking.
episodes?
I really do feel sorry because everybody who's a millennial probably doesn't realize that cash is an asset that actually can generate income.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cash can generate income.
It's legit. It's true. I mean,
You mean like 0.1%?
See, that's what I mean. Here's what happened. We have now been. When did the Great Recession happen?
It was 2008, 2009. Yeah.
So this horrible thing happened in 2008 and 9, and the fact, well, it's good and it's bad, is that our federal government decided we were going to make a concerted effort to just slash interest rates.
Sure.
So for the last decade, and I have a chart I'll hold up in a minute. The last decade, interest rates have just been in free fall, and then they've just sat at the bottom. I mean, they've sat at the ground, and you're just wondering, well, are we ever going to make money on cash? I mean, so I wanted, when I got so excited when I was like, wait a minute, cash is starting to get legit again. I mean, we're not at historic marks yet. I mean, we're not back where we should be if you look at things by the decade. I'll give you some perspective on that in a minute. But in terms of looking at a decade where everything's been under 0.5%.
Right.
Now because listen to this, cash in a lot of, now realize we are in August of 2018. It's very easy for you to go get 1.75 on your cash now.
Which, if you're someone who just has all of your money sitting in a brick and mortar savings account, your ears should have just like perked up completely because 1.8 is exponentially better than that 0.25 you're likely getting at your brick and mortar.
Well, what we've been told, and it's kind of become just a saying. Cash is trash.
Yeah, that's right.
You hear that, and I feel so bad because I picked on the millennials because you have an entire generation.
Hey, be careful with the microphones. This is expensive equipment.
We have an entire generation. By the way, I hit the microphone if you guys didn't realize it. But we have an entire generation doesn't realize that cash makes money. But then also for our savers who are getting close to retirement, these poor people have been pushed further and further out on the risk spectrum just so they can try to capture some yield, capture some return. That's not good to think that this is what's been going on for the last decade. So I wanted to let me show you my chart. I'm going to hold it up. Do you like it when I feel like Carrot Top, when I show up with props?
I often, when I think of you, Carrot Top is what comes to my mind. So, but before the muscles.
Muscular redhead?
Before the muscles.
So now that I've put up my chart, here's because you guys out there in podcast land who can't see the charts, those of you out in YouTube, you're like, man, that's a good looking chart. Put on 8.5 by 11 plain white copy paper. Come on, Brian, put it on bond at least. But what I did was this chart it's from bankrate.com. It's from 1984 to 2016, and it shows CD rates. Now, I focused on the 1-year CD rate because I felt like that was the closest thing to kind of talk about money market rates
cash,
and savings accounts and cash, short-term cash, because anything less than 1 year is considered really short-term money. So here, I want to give you some perspective. Over the last decade, 2008, where were we at on January of 2008? Interest rates on 1-year CDs was at 3.5%.
It doesn't sound awful. 3.5% on cash sounds pretty good.
Then the Great Recession hit in 2008 and 9, and we went in 2009. In January we were at 1.79. So I was right after things started getting bad at the end of 2008. And then by January of 2010 we were at 0.81, so well below 1%. And then it just continued to fall. 2011 we started in January at 0.48. Then 0.34, and then we just sat around 0.2, 0.28. We just floated around there. You get the point. Cash became horrible.
Right.
And what gets me is that if you even think about this from historical standpoints, if you go back to 1985, cash, 1-year CD was paying 9.36.
Again, and yeah, I guess it is my generation. That just seems amazing.
Yeah, you're like, I'll go put my whole portfolio in cash. That's what you're thinking, isn't it? That's what a lot of people are probably thinking. I mean, if we could get back to 1990, it was 7.95.
Okay.
1995, it was 5.65. In 2000, it was 5%. 2005, it was 2%, 2.08%. And then in 2010, as I've already shared, it was at 0.81. And now it's exciting. Now, I told you, money markets, it's not hard at all for you to go get 1.75. 1-year CDs now are at 2.4 to 2.5%.
Wow.
So we've actually gained a lot of ground, and now we're at the point where you should at least pay attention. So I figured we'd spend the rest of the show now that I've hopefully got you excited that this is something you just don't need to think about cash being trash, and you don't need to ignore and just abandon this type of asset. We can now talk about what you need to do.
Because here's the deal. Everyone needs some emergency reserves. Now, what that level of emergency reserves is for you can vary based on a number of different circumstances, but you need it. So if you have cash sitting around, you should be thinking about this, and this pertains to you whether you are 21 years old or whether you are 91 years old.
So let's hit these. I mean, I have 5 of them, Bo. I turned this into a fancy little 5 checklist. Number 1 was pull your bank statements to see what you're being paid. I have a typo here. It says pain. But being what you're paid on your current savings.
Right now, pain is right.
Yeah, because if it's less than 1%, you're not doing it right. So move to step 2. Number 2, FDIC money markets, and I've already shared this, are currently well over 1.5%. It's very easy for industry-leading money markets to be at 1.75. Remember, these are all FDIC, meaning that they are protected and insured by our federal government. And I want you to know, because we're putting this out in August of 2018, we know that our content lives on for years.
That's right.
So if you're listening to this in 2023 and interest rates are now 6%, you'll understand that we were excited in 2018 about 1.75%. So keep that out there.
You mentioned that FDIC insured money markets are over 1.5% with some of the industry leaders. How do I know if the money market I'm using is FDIC insured? Is there a way I can go check that?
Well, I mean, I recommend people go out to the FDIC website. I mean, it is a government entity. They have a search function right there on their website where you can go and check out banks, verify, and then this is one of those things is that I actually go verify the address and other things, and I'll even call the 1-800 number that's listed on the FDIC website and then call that bank number and say, hey, is it true you're offering an online division that pays this rate? They'll tell you. They want your business. So that leads to number 3. Don't just think about FDIC money markets. A lot of you guys have investment accounts or brokerage accounts at, say, Fidelity Investments. Right. And a lot of you guys don't realize they have sweep accounts. Every one of your brokerage accounts has some type of, they know that you're going to have cash coming in through dividends or just you made automatic contributions. So they're required to kind of make sure that money's working for you. The problem is sometimes those default sweep accounts are not the best choice for you. For example, Fidelity, they have F Cash.
Okay.
I looked this up as of today. And that's right. I say that that way on purpose because F Cash, I mean, it really is F Cash because it's 0.25% for accounts that are less than $100,000.
So what you're saying is if you have a brokerage account at Fidelity, there's a chance, probably high likely chance that your default cash holding inside of your account is this cash holding paying 0.25%.
If it's a taxable account. A lot of times if it's retirement, they're smart enough to know the government looks at retirement accounts with a closer eye. So that falls to the next one I'm going to tell you about, which is also on the account application, you could choose the Fidelity Government Cash Reserves as your default sweep account. And guess what it's paying? The 7-day yield on the Fidelity Government Cash Reserves is 1.61%.
That's fantastic.
Big difference between 1.61% and 0.25. We just picked you up close to 1.4% after doing absolutely nothing except checking a box or just making sure that your sweep is a different one. Now, that's not an endorsement of either one of these products. I don't want people we don't get into products. We don't do that. I just want to give you guys a case in point of with brokerage accounts, you need to wake up. I get it. 2 years ago, probably not much of a difference between the Fidelity Cash Reserves and the Fidelity F Cash. Yep. Just not a big difference. Now, big difference.
As a brief aside, if you are someone who's sitting on substantial cash, and when I say substantial, I mean like greater than 6 figures of cash, whether that be for a 36-month emergency reserve, or maybe you sold a piece of property and you're waiting to do it, or you're building a house fund, or
you
whatever.
Have a big tax payment.
Or a big tax payment
next
April.
April.
There are some institutional money market funds that you can actually earn like 1.9% on liquid cash. Now, there are some caveats there. Make sure you know what you're buying. If you're one of those people and you have some questions, by all means, reach out to us. We're happy to help. But just know that there are options for your cash that can do better than default 0.25%.
Yep. So I want to move on to number 4. I want you to reevaluate what you're keeping in cash reserves. What I mean by this is we see this with prospects. We see this with clients. You guys that are part of the Money Guy family, I think we're kindred spirits. I mean, we're good with money.
Yep.
And so when you're good with money and you know that cash has been just trash and it hasn't been making anything, usually there's a lot of pushback on anything that you want to keep liquid, because what does a client or what does a prospect tell us? I don't want to go to cash. It's not paying anything.
It's not, it's just
You're not
dragging my portfolio.
And we're worried about, typically we want liquidity for cash reserves, savings, protection, just in case you needed it. But it's not uncommon that people, because cash was paying so little, it is pushing them naturally further out on that risk spectrum. So I'm just telling you, now that we've realized that cash is paying a little bit more, reevaluate how you look at cash. Reevaluate your relationship, because it might be time to come back and start realizing that maybe I should give cash a second chance, as long as I'm structuring it the right thing. And then I wanted to talk about, well, how do you prioritize putting this money and making it work? I mean, because we talk about cash reserves a lot. What does that mean when you say cash reserves, Brian? I wanted to tell you that if you're brand new and starting out, you got to get to $1,000 ASAP.
You know, first-time job, recent college grad, maybe you just went through a negative life event like a divorce or something like that. Get to $1,000. Do that first.
And with a goal of trying to get to 5. I mean, once you get to $1,000 to $5,000, then we can move on to more stable ground. The person that is on more stable ground, that's when we start talking about having 3 to 6 months of cash reserves. Now, whenever, because that's not just a Money Guy recommendation.
Right.
Everybody says 3 to 6 months. So what I always get annoyed when I see that and I see people talk about is they just say 3 to 6 months. They give no guidance on what does that mean.
I don't know if I'm 3 or I don't know if I'm 6.
Yeah, where do you know you're on that spectrum? Look at your job. How hard would it be to replace your income? If you work in a job where you're confident that you leave tomorrow, you probably got 3 other jobs that could line up next month, you're probably okay with 3 months. But if you're highly technical, highly compensated, but very technical, and you know it's going to take you 6 months, maybe even 9 months to get a job, I want you to update your cash reserves to reflect that.
Sure.
You need to know, how long could I be without having this income coming in? You probably need liquidity to be the bridge to cover that. So have the cash reserves.
And then if you have a spouse or a significant other, it may make sense to think about, are you a 2-income household or a 1-income household? And if there are 2 incomes, are they equally distributed, or is one the primary? Because that will affect the shocks to your cash flow system. Those kinds of circumstances will dictate whether you're 3 months or 6 months. So maybe you could keep a lower cash reserve if you're 2 spouses that earn about the same amount of money.
Sure.
Then you could come justify 3 months. If one spouse is the primary and something happened, then maybe 6 months makes more sense.
Yeah, definitely. All these things are very customized, and that leads to the last group of people, because we got the young starting out, we've got the people on more stable ground. Of course, we got our retired people out there, and the retired people are like, 3 to 6 months? I can't do that. And they're right. 3 to 6 months for a retired person, it's a very personal decision. So please, this is where you need to be measuring twice, cutting once. So don't just take our advice. Make sure you hire somebody or talk to somebody or really have counsel, because you don't want to make a mistake on this. But it is not uncommon. If you're retired, you might need to have 18 to 36 months worth of liquidity, so that if we had a downturn or something that was going to impact the value of your investments that you're living off of, that you'd be able to,
Weather the storm.
Weather the storm and make it through it. So all these people have different needs, but I strongly encourage, if you have something, a big meaning your assets are big enough that they're like a small corporation, you might want a professional to give you a second opinion on it. And then that leads to the last point I had. Number 5 was maximizing interest rates without falling prey to bait and switch. And I look at you with a smile, Bo.
It's sunk, right? Like as soon as you said that, I sunk in my seat.
Well, because there is a major player. I haven't heard about this switch tactic recently, but this went on for years and it drove me crazy. I mean, do you want to share this story? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
because it impacted you.
So one of the things that we used to, we always tell people this, there are websites out there like bankrate.com. We can go see who the highest interest rate payer is.
Don't give names though, because
No,
I don't
I
want to
won't.
get us in trouble.
So Brian had recently, this is like 10 years ago, I mean, this is a while ago, had opened a high yield savings account, and in true Bo fashion, I wanted to one up Brian. So I went same site and I found a financial institution that had a higher rate than what Brian was earning, and I was just planning on rubbing it in his face every day that my cash was making more than his cash. And so I did the thing. I checked the FDIC website. I called the bank, made sure it was legit, and sure enough, it was a legit account. It was FDIC insured. So I opened it up, and I had like 0.01% higher interest rate than Brian.
That's right. You beat me.
Who was the guy who said, now the rest of the story? Who is that?
Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey. So now come in with a Paul Harvey.
So here's what happened, and this was a very deceptive practice. This same bank was offering best-in-class interest rates on FDIC-insured money markets, and it's exactly what Bo said. They checked out. He invested in it. Well, here's the problem. That would only keep that product line open for probably 6 months, fill up enough money of what they were trying to raise, and then they would go set up a new bank branch, same FDIC bank, but they just have a different name, different domain name on the website, and it'd be a different product launch, and they would make it best in class, and then poor old Bo and everybody else that originally got best in class because they went to Bankrate, somehow that product would kind of disappear. It was more
The
of an
rates would even start
introductory rate.
dropping, yeah.
They would start dropping to where instead of it being industry leading, it would now be half of the industry.
That's right.
And this was a very deceptive practice that was going on for years. I mean, and I was telling everybody, be very careful with this. So do your research. Make sure that the FDIC money market, the online bank, or whoever you're considering working with, that they truly are consistent, that they've been doing this for years. They're not just doing spin-off product lines, and because you don't want these rates just being introductory rates. You want these to be industry, because this is changing. I mean, this was an ever-evolving thing. That's what I think is interesting, is that I have two different money market providers, and they're both good, both world-class. The first one you talked about is still really good.
Yep.
And then I have another one that's tied to a credit card company, and they both are back and forth on when they raise their interest rates, but they both doing really good jobs. So be careful of introductory rates. Use resources like bankrate.com to shop around and make sure you can see that they're consistent industry leaders. And then here's the last thing, because I love a deal. I love getting a deal. There's constantly usually offers. Like I can tell you one I just got in the mail recently. It was Capital One sent me an offer, a paper snail mail offer, but I saw it's all over the internet too. It's called the Offer 200, where you can receive a $200 bonus on $10,000 new account.
You read those flyers?
Well, they're big postcards.
Huh.
I mean, it's hard not when you put them in the recycling bin. You're like, whoa, $200 if I'd open up an account with these people. So it's one of those things where there's ways to maximize your rate of return. But the big takeaway after you look at these 5 tips and tricks that we just shared with you is that cash is coming alive again. It's an asset class that you need to be paying attention to. Right. And you probably wonder, well, that's great. I'll go back. I've got some actionable things to do here. That's our gift to you. You're probably noticing, man, these guys are just loving on me, giving me this free advice. What's the catch? Why are they doing this? And this really is our platform. We feel like this is our education platform. Love on you, give you the gift of this free advice. And all we ask, your only obligation to us, is that if you get to the point that you're successful enough that you want to get a second opinion, or you want to have somebody transition you from do-it-yourselfer to professional investor, where we're kind of helping you manage these assets, give us a look. Go check us out, moneyguy.com. Go to the Contact Us page. We love working with clients all across the country. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. We're the Money Guy Show, and we go beyond common sense.